Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of unprotected talk, borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
May 8th, 2015. It's a very big day in the world. You know why, don't you? It's the day that people are celebrating Victory over Europe Day, meaning the defeat of the Nazis, forgotten by most conservatives, who are focused only on Ronald Reagan, not understanding that without World War II, we wouldn't be here. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about World War II, VE Day, what it means to us today. We're going to talk about the elections in England, which mean more to me than anyone else in radio, because I'm still the only radio host or member of the American media banned from entering England. And the last time Cameron won, I was told from backwater people in the background that he would take me off the list. Well, he never took me off the list, nor do I think he'll do it now. But it's not about me. And the third part of the show today is this. I'm dedicating today's show to my silent brother, Jerome, who was born May 8th, 1944, and was silent his entire life and died in a home at a very young age. And today's show is dedicated to my silent brother, Jerome, and all real special needs children. All real special needs children and my brother Jerome today are being honored. And I'll tell that story for those of you who never heard it. It's important to know why I am who I am, because, frankly, he speaks through me. And we'll talk about that as well. But I want to begin with England and the defeat of the Labour Party, Ed Miliband. Thank God he lost. But, you know, don't count your blessings so fast. It's all a sham. There's very little difference between the Labour Party in England and the Tory Party in England, and I'll prove it in one sentence. Take a guess who advised Cameron on how he could win the election. Obama's campaign manager, Jim Messina. What does that tell you? If Obama's political advisor, Jim Messina, is getting credit for leading conservative British Prime Minister David Cameron to a victory, what does it tell you about David Cameron? It tells you it's all rigged. It tells you there's no difference in the West between one side and the other with regard to most issues. Certainly there are fine details that separate the two. But if Axelrod is representing the Labour Party in advising them, and he loses, and Jim Messina, who he calls his brother, advised the other guy, it tells you the same scam that's going on in America is going on in England. Moreover, what the hell are these guys doing in England to begin with? What do they need these creeps to go over there for and mess up the English elections? There's only one good note coming out of England. I want you to hear it in clip 2. This is the Labour Party, the Ed Miliband, who was defeated. Listen to what he said in clip 2.
This has clearly been a very disappointing and difficult night for the Labour Party.
Thank God.
We haven't made the gains we wanted in England and Wales, and in Scotland, we've seen a surge of nationalism overwhelm our party.
Did you hear the word nationalism? Who in America who's been calling for a nationalist party? Michael Savage. Who has told you that a nationalist party could win after a certain number of years in America? Michael Savage. Who has defined his radio career by the 3 words, borders, language, and culture? Michael Savage. But here's the good news. In England, when a party leader is defeated, he resigns out of shame. I want you to listen to 3, and you'll hear what a real democracy sounds like in clip 3.
Britain needs a strong Labour Party. Britain needs a Labour Party that can rebuild after this defeat so we can have a government that stands up for working people again. And now it's time for someone else to take forward the leadership of this party. So I'm tendering my resignation, taking effect after this afternoon's commemoration of VE Day at the Cenotaph. I want to do so straight away because the party needs to have an open and honest debate about the right way forward without constraint.
So he resigned. He resigned because he lost. Now, in America, we had an election in November. It was a landslide against Obama's communist, socialist, Islamist policies. And instead of resigning, as he should have, You know what he did? He told us to drop dead. He doubled down, then he tripled down on his left-wing fanaticism. So don't fool yourself for 1 minute. The left wing in this country is a broken wing. America has rejected that broken wing. America has said no to that broken wing over and over again. But this small band of fanatics who have destroyed the Democrat Party, the same small band of fanatics who dominate the American media, want you to believe that they are the majority. They're not the majority. They're a tiny minority. And that's the opening to the show. The phone number here is 855-407-282. Robert, look at the telos, please, because something's wrong with it again. I think I'm in a new studio, by the way. Michael Savage is in a studio that I was in from 1994 to approximately 2008. I did many, many shows in this studio, many. It's like a bunker built into the side of a hill. I mean, this is the real McCoy. This is dug into the side of a hill. And I've been doing shows from other studios, but I'm back in this one. I had all new equipment put in. Feels good to be. It's like going back to an old home that you know about. But owing to the madness in America today and the threats that those of us who are telling the truth are facing, I have 5 studios, and I move around from one to the other, and no one knows where I am from day to day for obvious reasons. That's not invented. It's not a shtick. It's real. That's what I have to do to survive the vermin on the left. And I think the best way to continue on the show right now is get right down to it. Again, May 8th is a special day for me because on May 8th, 1944, my brother, the silent brother Jerome, was born. And he died October 12th, 1969, never having spoken a word and never having done more than breathe. He had to be cared for all his life. I have to be rather careful in what I say to you about this topic because it's very emotional for me, and I really don't want to get schmaltzy, and I don't want you to think I'm using my brother for any reason other than to say the show is dedicated to my silent brother and all real, emphasis real, special needs children. So let me read you 3 pages from a book I wrote years ago called Psychological Nudity, entitled My Silent Brother. Here it is. I remember that the day they gave Jerome away, my uncle was crying like a baby in front of the South Bronx tenement we lived in. All the neighbors were out watching. Think Calcutta, a Satyajit Ray film. The little blonde boy with blue eyes was only 5. I was 7. My sister was 9. He was packed off like an animal to live and suffer and die in silence, alone in one of New York's snake pits after another. The so-called doctor told my parents he would only live to age 7. He lied. The great doctor also told my parents, quote, it would be better for the other children to give him away. This created a lifetime of shame and guilt for me. I became emotionally responsible for discarding this helpless little boy whom I loved more than anyone else in my entire life. How I love my little defenseless brother. I can't do it. I can't read the story. I'm sorry. I just can't read it. I just don't want to go down this road. I just can't do it. It weakens me to tell you the story. And what can I say to you? That's the story. I can't go on with this. It's too much. It's just too much. I'll read you the end. Finally, after about 20 years in one hellhole after another, he died after being attacked and bitten on most of his body by a maniac, housed there with helpless, innocent souls unable to defend themselves. Jerome is buried in the same cemetery as my mother and father in hard clay soil in an old Long Island potato field. He was the Jesus of our family who died for my sins. 3 pages, my silent brother, that's the story. What can you say about it? Nothing. I'm sorry I read it to you, actually. But I'd rather do that than talk about, the United Kingdom elections. I mean, no one in the media has more at stake in what happened in the UK in the media than me. Because remember, I'm the only member of the media, I'm proud to tell you, still banned from entering England. And I told you the story. The definitive fight for free speech is me. And how one man stood firm against an entire government to free my name from a list of murderers and terrorists. And I've never freed my name because of Gordon Brown and the scum in the Labour Party. So thank God at least the Labour Party didn't win. But Cameron, who had promised people who knew me he'd take my name off the list, shamed himself by not doing so. You know what I'm saying? It's a huge scandal in England. And what's going on in America is very, very near and dear to my heart because of what went on in England. And I know an awful lot about free speech. And I want to make a side note No one in the American media, save one person, came to my defense. I think it was only Laura Ingraham on radio who came to my aid. Not the big mouth Rush Limbaugh, the great conservative. He made believe it didn't happen. Because if it's not about him and if he can't capitalize on it in some way or make it part of his show, it's of no interest to him. He didn't help me. Certainly Hannity didn't say a word. O'Reilly didn't say a word. No one on Fox News came to my aid. But the preface of the book says the savage fight against censorship. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that funny? Savage was fighting against censorship in England. And it's an important story. We can talk about that as well. Banned in Britain, Michael Savage beating the liberal blacklist. Well, I never beat it. I'm still on it. We can talk about Barack Obama's political advisor, Jim Messina, getting credit for leading conservative British Prime Minister David Cameron to an overwhelming victory. You get that one? And then we're going to talk about how the Nazis were crushed in World War II, how every man defeated Superman, how they were overrun and defeated by every man here in the United States of America. I think that's a pretty good show, and I invite you to call 855-400-7282. While they're calling, we're going to go to a quick commercial break so you can listen to the great people who put their money where their mouth is and back the show. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth with gold and silver. Call 800-BUYCOIN.
After the hour of Savage Nation, I think I've regained my composure. I'm going to continue the 2 pages. The story my silent brother is found in my book, Train Tracks, and I'm just going to continue because you'll see why I have dedicated my life to defending the defenseless and how the vermin on the left have turned me into what I am not in order to make certain that no one really listens to me, but they've been defeated. My success is their greatest defeat. So let me pick it up. So they gave the child away, and it made me emotionally scarred because they told me they were doing it for the healthy children. And I said how I love my little defenseless brother, born blind and deaf and unable to hold himself up. All those times I would secretly sneak into the kitchen where he sat propped up in a high chair. Don't go in there. Don't bother him. He can't see you or hear you anyway. But I would slip in and whistle to him, and his eyes would light up. I would see a sparkle where the doctor said there was only darkness. So I knew he could hear me whistling to him and see my shadow or smell me. He was alive. And they were told to exile him by the doctor for my sake. Well, after he was gone, the little apartment became more silent than when the silent boy was there. For years afterward, I would sneak into the dresser drawer where my mother preserved his little clothing and eyeglasses. They tried to see if they would work. I would hold one of his laundered shirts to my nose, pressing the fabric right into my nostrils to glean a few molecules of his scent. I even wore his eyeglasses, making the room all blurry. My brother, they took him away. Well, for decades, not just the 2 years she was told he would live, my poor mother took buses and subways all the way out to Staten Island to a hellhole or up to Poughkeepsie to visit him. Sometimes my sister went with her, but mostly she went alone. The new clothing she brought for him on each and every visit was never seen on him. They wheeled him out in the same institutional sackcloth. The clothing was stolen. She would come home wrecked and hopeless for days afterward. The arguments between my parents started to get very bad after this, with both blaming each other when it was really the doctor's fault. There was some kind of medication given during pregnancy that damaged my brother's central nervous system during development. Well, finally, after about 20 years in one hellhole after another, he died, after being attacked and bitten on most of his body by a maniac, housed there with helpless, innocent souls, unable to defend themselves. I read the rest before, so I'm doing this because I want you to understand that there are so many people in the world with children with real special needs who suffer themselves in their own silence. And while the government wisely helps these people as best they can, there are people who capitalize on special needs benefits by declaring their children to have special needs when they don't really have them. Along the lines of the frauds you see with the blue tickets on their cars, who are not handicapped, who park